All right, welcome back. Episode 18 of the Ryan Ripken Show. Brad, am I lagging hard or what?
It's not great, but it's not terrible.
Isn't that great, Ed? Bears. Well, hey, we're at different locations today, but we're running the show as always Monday and Thursday. We're going to keep adding days on, but obviously a big time to talk because it was a big weekend for Baltimore sports. Brad,
Yeah.
to say the least, there's a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are a Baltimore sports fan, you are not feeling great today. It was pretty tough. And so we decided to bring on some reinforcements. We got our buddy Zach here, and obviously huge sports fan, huge Baltimore sports fan, and he is a stat guy. So we figured, hey, let's bring him on. Let's talk about it a little bit and see where we get to. So what's going on, Zach?
How's it going, guys? Like you said, could definitely be better at this moment, but long way to go in the season. I mean, Ravens season still got far way to go, and the Rangers still got to beat the O's one more time. So we're not dead yet. That's all I can say. We're not dead yet.
Definitely not. But I will say, if we were going to write this out in our minds, or at least in my mind, Zach, I know you've tweeted out some things. I did not have the Ravens losing the way that they did and the Orioles dropping both games at home on my bingo card for this weekend. Needless to say, I think a lot of people were having probably not the best thoughts running through their minds.
No, not at all. Like you said, I think for a little bit after the Orioles game, I was sitting there trying to tweet out, just stay positive. But I have to be honest, I think I was staring at a wall just blankly for a little bit after that. I was like, wow. It's one of those things where it escalated so fast where it was going to be the greatest weekend of all time. And then you're like, oh, that was not fun.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like, the Ravens game was awful, and then you're like, well, at least I got the O's to look forward to. And then and then 2 innings in, it was like, well, I guess we'll just turn this off and not even bother. It was pretty rough for sure as an O's fan.
Yeah. So, hey, well, we're going to dive into this. So for those that are just tuning in right now, well, first off, we're close on the channel to having 1,000 subscribers. So if you're new to the channel and you like it, or you like Zach or Brad, a thumbs up was great. And then if you like all of us, hit a subscribe button. We'd appreciate it. But we're going to dive into this game to recap it, really break this down on so many different levels. Zach, our stat guy, he's just chomping at the bit with that. You know what? I got to give you a compliment, by the way. I can't grow a stash like that. I'll be honest.
It's just starting to come in. For the longest time, I attempted to, and everyone told me I couldn't grow a stash like this. So maybe that's why I still try to do it. I'm trying to prove everyone wrong. And for the longest time, I was a big neckbeard guy. I hate to admit it, but now looking back, I said it was a beard at the time, but it wasn't. It wasn't working.
You look like a neckbeard guy. That doesn't seem right.
Back in 18-year-old Zach thought he had the coolest beard ever. And now looking back, I'm like, there was nothing on your face. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Well, hey, you just talked about you wanted to prove people wrong. Well, that's what the Orioles are going to try to prove is to prove everyone wrong that after 2 games they can come back from. So we're going to break down game 2 in depth, and we're going to talk about the Ravens Steelers as well. And then we're going to move into, because it is Monday, a little bit of buy or sell with what's going around the rest of the NFL. Am I missing anything, Brad? Are we ready to rock and roll?
Oh, let's do it.
All right, everyone. So as we know, this game did not get off to the best start for the Orioles. Actually, I'll take that back. It did get off to the start that you had hoped for. Orioles take a 2-0 lead going into the second inning. And then from the top of the second inning on, you could just feel the air come out of the stadium little by little as the Rangers did a ton of damage in the second and third innings. And, Zach, you were there, correct? On the ground?
I was there the first
game one.
I did not make. Yeah, I was there game 1. Same kind of thing, just very demoralizing early on. But yesterday we talked a little before, but it was the second inning. You were coming in, just incredible vibes after taking a 2-0 lead. It was, okay, here we go. And then immediately the high just crashed down. And you could almost, even on TV, you could feel it in the stadium.
I mean, I definitely, I was there. I had my glasses on. I thought I was bringing a vibe. I met the Super Fuji fan at the 105.7 pregame, which was an amazing moment. And I put out, book it, Orioles are going to win. And I don't care that if people are going to say awful take, what are you going to say that, Orioles losing game 2? It's stupid. Of course, I believe in the team's going to win the game. So be it.
Mm-hmm.
But Brad, I think we have a graphic here to talk about game 2 as we're breaking down. And I think this is kind of what the crazy part, Brad, if you want to run us through it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the wild part was that the Orioles obviously lost 11-8, and the O's ended up having more hits than the Rangers did, 14-11, extra base hits. I think I had, is this still right? Did I mix it? So the 7 extra base hits?
No, that is
okay.
That's correct.
Just want to make sure I had that right. And then runners in scoring position, 3 for 13, 5 to 17. And really the walks, I think, is the glaring stat here. The Orioles gave up 11 walks to the Rangers 2. And that is with the abysmal bullpen that the Rangers have. Pitches thrown, 206 to 163. And strikes that were thrown as well. Of those pitches, we have 115 strikes from the O's and 109 for the Rangers. So, if you look at just these stats, it was kind of like, well, it's not so bad, except the walks. The walks was the really terrible part about the whole thing.
And it's evident. And we're going to break this down a little bit more. But the reason why I wanted to throw in the pitches thrown, by the way, is because that tells a story. And for when you have to throw more pitches, and even though everything we saw, the Orioles, they had more extra base hits. They did more damage on the base paths. But when you give Texas an opportunity by giving them free passes on base, things can happen. And again, when pitch counts go up, that gives hitters more confidence in the batter's box. They feel like they're constantly seeing what's going on. And Zach, as we alluded to with these walks, there's some stats behind this. And I know you've been brewing some up for us.
So I kind of went down a rabbit hole on this 10 plus walks in a game. So 24 times in the postseason, an MLB team has walked 10 plus times, and they are 18-6 in those games. Meaning if you walk a team 10 plus times, you're probably not going to win that game. And then, of course, you had just the incredible batting eye of Corey Seager taken to a place as he became the first player in postseason history with a 5-walk game. And it was kind of crazy. I was going through, and I think it's 17 guys have had 10 or 4+ walks in a game. And the names on this list, Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, Frank Thomas, you have David Ortiz, actually David Ortiz twice, because of course he is, Freddie Freeman, Bobby Abreu, Chase Utley. I mean, it is some really good company to be in. And what's actually incredible, and this was the interesting thing I found out about this, that there are only actually twice. It was, I believe, Corey Seager became the second player to have 4+ walks and be a part of a 10+ walk game in the postseason, which I thought was weird, because if you walk a player 4+ times, clearly you don't have it that day. So of the 24 times, only 2 of those guys with 4+ walks being involved in those 10+ walk games was kind of interesting to me. I thought it would be closer. You'd see almost 50%.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It was wild to see. It was wild to experience, because the Orioles pitching staff overall, something that they hadn't done all year long, is really that, to be honest. And for Grayson Rodriguez specifically, you felt like once he got through that first inning, things were going to maybe start to settle down. But unfortunately for Grayson, which we're going to dive into in a second here, Grayson had trouble then, his fastball command, and we have the videos to show it. But then after that, you have Brian Baker come in, who did not have his control, 3 walks. Then it just takes one swing of the bat, and whammy, the damage is done. And that's exactly what happened. And you look up, you blink, you snap your fingers, and you go, holy shirts and pants. How did the Rangers get 9 runs in 2 innings? I believe in the first 3 innings alone, there was 7 walks given out to Rangers hitters. Yeah. So I mean, Brad, you got to see it. Besides watching me in the background on the TV, what did you see on your end?
Yeah, for me, I mean, from the jump, it felt as if Grayson, you could just see it on his face that he just, I don't know if he just wasn't ready or if he was overwhelmed or what have you, but just like seeing it on his face, you didn't even have to necessarily, count all the walks to see that he just didn't have it. There just wasn't something, there was something there that he just wasn't clicking for him. And it was written all over his face. So, you hate to see him throw 1.2 innings, inning and 2/3. So it is just, it's tough to see, but man, after I would say even just that first batter in the second inning, you can kind of just tell that there's something just wasn't right with Grayson, especially because all season he had been lights out. And so it was troubling, of course, but you got to wonder if perhaps the stage, I hate to say it, as cliche as it is, the stage ended up being too big for him.
That is a cliche right there. We can't, for whatever it was, and for people that were running this out, Grayson deserved to start game 2, by the way.
For sure.
For everyone that's going to sit out there and go, well, wait a minute, like what the hell happened? The dude didn't have his A stuff and he couldn't control it. And it was hard for him to battle through, and Texas made him pay. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, and the thing of it is, we talked with Gavin last week about this, about how treating it, it's just every other game. And then we kind of like laughingly said, well, that's bullshit. It's not just like every other game. And it kind of was evident with Grayson yesterday. It's okay to get nervous. Sometimes that's just how it happens. And it unfortunately happened at the wrong time for Grayson yesterday.
Yeah, if you're going to be upset with a rookie pitcher not having his best performance in his first playoff game against one of the best offenses in the league, and I don't know if baseball's the sport for you, because that's just what happens. That's just what happens. And I think my biggest takeaway is we're getting into the third inning. That grand slam, how many times this year have the Orioles been in a situation where they're down a run or two, other team has bases loaded, and then they get a massive double play to end it? And I started to think that it was going to be same old movie, Orioles get right to the edge and, get your heart rate up and then find a way to escape. But it was just that one pitch, the grand slam was really what kind of put it out of the stadium. You could see it on guys' faces, that one brilliant picture of Austin Hayes looking over the wall as it goes by. And you could tell, had we gotten out of that inning and it's just 6 or 7-2, it's a different ball game from that point on. But 9 was just demoralizing. You could tell.
Well, and credit to the Rangers offense as well. I mean, we talked about this leading up to the series, is that the Rangers offense was just unbelievable throughout the season. So it wasn't a surprise to see them, see the bats go off. I think it was just a little surprising to see how many walks were given up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, now this is the fun part, because I was putting this together, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Ryan's Breakdown with Grayson Rodriguez here with my guys here. Yeah. A little applause here. So, hey, look, this isn't a bashing of anything with Grayson, by the way. This is just realistic understanding what's going on. Here's his pitch chart from yesterday, right? You can take a guess, or you can look at the screen. Green means ball. The darker colors, darker reds are strikes, looking and missing. Yeah, orange is foul ball, and in play is blue. So the biggest takeaway I had from this is that a lot of Grayson's pitches that he missed were up in the zone, high, or then he was missing out of the zone. And as you can see from overall, and if you watch the game, and I was able to, I had a front row seat, and literally, I unfortunately or fortunately did, is that Grayson, it felt like the adrenaline was running high. And when the adrenaline's running high and you let it eat a little bit, you're going to miss up, right? So that's first and foremost here. Now I'm going to roll the clip. Rolling, everybody. So here we go. First, I want to bring this up real quickly, because this is after the Orioles took a 2-0 lead, okay? So the biggest thing that you want to start out an inning, the next inning, you want to shut down an inning. That is first pitch strike, go after the first hitter, which isn't pictured here, by the way, but Nathaniel Lowe walked to open the inning, and the first pitch was up and in for a ball. So Lowe walks, next batter up is Josh Young, and if you take a look at that count, it says 2-0. right? So as a hitter, you know you're probably getting a good pitch, especially with the lead 2-0. So you can really hunt the fastball. What does Young do? He hunts that puppy, smokes it the other way, and now it's first and third, right? So you're following me so far here. This is where it's such an important moment here, right? So we'll get a freeze frame. He gives a little wave. All right, situation, Taveras, the 9-hole hitter. And this is where it gets interesting. Grayson gets up in the count 1-2. But when you don't have command of your fastball, hitters are not going to be as worried about some of your other pitches. So in this case, though, Grayson gets Taveras down. And the problem, what we see, is that when he throws this 1-2 pitch, he's going to miss it middle away. And that is right over the heart of the plate. It's not an elevated fastball. And what's Taveras do? Smacks it. Okay, I'm going to freeze frame that for a second. And it's my show. I can do what I want. You guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the 1-2 pitch. And again, maybe on a normal circumstance, when Grayson's really feeling good, that can fool a hitter a little bit more. But it's hard when that's over the heart of the plate and hitters don't feel like they are threatened by your other pitches overall, right? So heater catches the middle part of the plate. We'll start it again. Taveras smokes it. Said gives the attempt. It's just too far out of reach. And Texas ties the game. Just like that. In the blink of an eye, this lineup can rake 1 through 9. There's no doubt about it. Okay? This is probably one of the at-bats here, and we talked about Corey Seager walking more times than I ever did in a season, it felt like. But so Corey Seager, if you look at the count, it's 3-2. And I understand it's a 2-2 game, but it's only the second inning. And I would love to ask Adley about this just because I'm fascinated with it, and it's not a bad thing. But when we showed you guys the chart, Brad, where was Grayson missing?
Up, I believe.
Up. That is correct. So watch Adley's glove here for a second. Where's Adley's glove located?
It's located up.
Brad,
Going up.
It's going up. So I'm just curious here, and I understand you have a base open in this scenario, and Corey Seager is a stud. Fun fact, Corey Seager and I were supposed to be roommates freshman year at South Carolina, but he had the audacity to get taken in the first round by the Dodgers. I think it turned out pretty well for him. $300 million later. Yeah, you hate when that happens, right? So, but watch here. Because he's starting high, that was the only thing I'm wondering is, did you really want Corey Seager to chase a pitch and be okay with something getting away? I would have much rather, if Corey Seager beats you right there, so be it, because of the struggles Grayson was having with his control. So what happens? Way up there.
Yeah.
And way up there. And this is where the wheels fall off then. Because now you got first and third, and this next batter coming up, it's Garcia. Grayson is still trying to find his pitches. This is after the swinging bunt hit by Garver. Grayson lays a fastball right down the middle, right kind of at the knees. Not a bad height-wise pitch, but Garcia smokes it right back up the middle. And so what I was trying to get across with this analysis here, guys, is that for Grayson, his fastball changeup, what makes him so special is that when his fastball's on, his changeup can set things up. But when you don't have that fastball control, people are going to be hard. It's going to be hard to fool hitters in the batter's box. And then you got to leave some more hittable pitches over the plate. And because Grayson's not throwing 101 today, he was only throwing 98, still hard as hell.
Yeah.
But that's
wish I could throw 98 on a bad day.
Yeah, I know, right? So this was a turning point right here, because if he could have attacked a little bit more, could have been more under control, I think this is a way different outcome. But because of being a little bit too particular with Seager, leaving some pitches over the plate, Texas didn't try to do too much. And that's why I had the stat of extra base hits, Brad. The Rangers had 3 on the game. They just took where the pitch was, and they took advantage of the pitches when the opportunities presented themselves. That was a lot of wins. Zach or Brad, someone give me a break because I'm winded.
Yeah. Actually, the first thing that I noticed when you were going through that was just another example of how baseball is such a game of inches and how it can, the outcome can be swayed up by just a little bit. That play, that base hit by Josh Young, if that's just that's a ground ball a few feet over, that's a ground ball double play. Orioles up 2-0, 2 outs. And so it's just, it's a great example of Young using the entire field, hitting it against the shift, and you got to give him credit. But you look at it and you're like, man, it's not like he came out here and ripped a double. It's not like immediately they just were hitting everything. It was a walk, then you get that ground ball you're looking for that, finds a hole, and then the wheels fall off, like you say. Then you have the tough at bat. Again, you give up the double, you give up the single and the walking Seager, and then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, it's 3-2, and they have guys on, on the corner. So it happens fast. You get the ground ball you're looking for, not where you want it, and then suddenly you're out of the game in a few more batters.
Yeah, it sucked. I mean, and Brad, when we were talking about this last night, I mean, this is where I'm saying where you try to limit damage, and the Orioles have done a good job of limiting damage. The fact that they didn't limit damage, hey, look, it wasn't because Jordan Montgomery, Brad, went out there and was shoving.
Right.
I mean, the Orioles actually got to him and put up some numbers.
Yeah, and the crazy thing was I don't want to say crazy, but the fortunate thing for the Rangers was, even though Montgomery didn't have his best stuff, or the Orioles were kind of taking it to him, because the score got away from them, they were able to leave Montgomery in there longer to kind of preserve their bullpen a little bit, get them rested for the games coming up in Texas. So it's unfortunate, but that's just that's the way it goes in playoff baseball.
Hey guys, I have a thought here. We got asked this earlier on Twitter, X, whatever the kids want to call it these days, that the decision to have Brian Baker come in as the reliever after Coulomb, and that was a very hot topic. And look, you know me, I want the best for every player, but I just want to start it with Zach. You could start it off with your thoughts. I'll bring up the rear on this, but Zach, thoughts a little bit. Brian Baker coming in a 5-2 game.
Personally, that's not where I would have gone, and I think I don't completely disagree with it, but I think when you were trying to get someone to lessen the damage, like you say, and do damage control, I'm not sure the exact time, but Brian Baker, it had been at least a month, 6 weeks since he had even pitched in the majors. So it's just a very interesting situation to bring him in kind of as that first go around back in the majors in such a, I guess, big game. I honestly don't have a problem with Brian Baker. Actually, for a while at the beginning of this year, he was one of our best. He was a top 3 reliever for us. So it's not that I'm going to sit here and say, Brian Baker's not the guy for that moment. I think the outcome is making people say that, but he has had flashes this year when, we watched him back, strut off the mound many times in multiple big moments this year. So I can't, say he was the wrong pitcher to bring in, but just with the situation around how long he hadn't pitched for the Orioles, it was an interesting time for him to get his feet back wet in the MLB.
So I actually, Dog Training Plus, he must have been reading my mind, because if you can put that up, Ryan, he said how Mike Baumann or Fuji not make the roster over Brian Baker, who got demoted halfway through the season. And you know what? We've talked about this. Fuji, a lot of people have some strong words for Shintaro Fujinami, but we've talked about this. You take out the Astros games for Fuji since coming to us in the since the All-Star break, and he did really well. ERA was below 3, and Fuji's also had starting pitching experience. So if you had to bring him in after Rodriguez only pitched 1 1/3 innings, there's a good likelihood you would have at least had Fuji in there for a little bit longer, rather than just kind of the merry-go-round of relievers in there.
Yeah, I mean, that was the question, right, that everyone had, is if John Means, who wasn't on the roster, who was going to be that guy? Well, it felt like it had to be a guy like Fuji. It had to be a guy like Mike Baumann. And look, everyone has their specific reasons why, and the Orioles felt in this case, Brian Baker could be that extra guy to give them a little bit more long relief and set them up in that situation. Now with Fuji, as we've seen, wipeout stuff wise, he probably, you can argue, has the most wipeout stuff that was still left in this bullpen. Cano, when he's on, obviously is disgusting, but that was something that had to go into a conversation. And for Bauman, look, he's done. He did a tremendous job all season. I don't, and I was hoping for him he'd get a chance to be on the postseason roster, obviously personally. But
what do you think? Why do you think that they didn't put Bauman in there? Any thoughts on that?
I really think there's a preference of what they saw in long relief and just maybe looking at matchups and how things were. And look, I'm not one to argue that, because that's a team's decision, right?
Sure.
But I guess the question I would have, how early in the game that it was, that if Jack Flaherty was coming in the game to pitch, I would have expected Jack Flaherty to come in the third inning instead of Brian Baker, just because that's even a more I know Jack Flaherty starting the game and going to the bullpen, that's foreign in itself, but still being in a game early on and Flaherty having some postseason experience, it felt like it would be. Now, Flaherty had trouble throwing strikes overall, but he did limit the damage for the most part. But so that was where I wanted to go, and I wanted people to touch on it. Look, you make a decision, they ran with it. The unfortunate part for Brian Baker was he got the first out of the inning. That was the great thing. Then the next problem was you walked the next three guys. You fell behind to that next hitter, which was Taveras, then Simeon. You let kind of slip away, and then that last at bat against Seager, you fall behind 2-0, and then you're in an uphill battle, and you walk the bases loaded. Garver one swing whammy, and we're out of there. So that's just a reality. But I wanted to bring it up to people. That was just a talking point. Personally, I thought Flaherty would have been the one before, but I can see why they thought Baker initially to go with. So I think before we'll move into the next part of this game, and then I know we'll wrap up here, but two players on the Orioles that haven't really gotten going. And we have another graphic for you. And that is, if I can find it.
I got it.
Is it in here, Brad? There you go. It's about Adley Rutschman and Cedric Mullins are the two hitters that we are specifically referring to. And Adley so far in the series is 1 for 8. He had a double in the game last night, 1 walk, 1 K. And unfortunately for Cedric Mullins, he's 0 for 8, and he was very close to having a ball leave the yard the other night or last night in game 2. But the Orioles offense, if we're going to do a positive here, those two guys are yet to get going. And personally, I still think Cedric's just grinding through his injuries, and it's been really hard to try to get back on top of that. From your guys' perspective, I'll let either of you guys go, because this is where it's going to tie in. If we're going into game 3 for the Orioles, and actually, Brad, let me start with you. Reason for optimism for the Orioles heading to Texas for game 3, down 2-0.
Well, if there's a team that you want on the road, it's the Orioles. They have the best road record in baseball, and so and let's not forget that the O's haven't been swept since May of last year. So for them to lose 3 in a row could be highly unlikely. Now, obviously, playoffs are a completely different story, and they should be treated differently, of course. But the odds of them winning this next game are quite high, given the way that they've treated the entire season. And I have a lot of confidence in them going down there into our Arlington tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the biggest point of optimism for me is the entire leading up to this series. It was get to the Rangers bullpen, and then we can play ball. And, the first game, even the second game, the Rangers did an incredible job of getting the right guys out there. And then in the 8th and 9th inning, you could tell it was like the Orioles found the kink in the armor.
Yeah.
And they got that confidence. And suddenly you could see in every single at bat, it was no longer, okay, how are we going to do this? It was, I want to be up there, because, there were times it was 11-8, and I was sitting there and I was like, are they about to do this? And it's crazy with this team. Like they never give up. They're never going to put their head down. They're just always going to keep going. And that's why, like you said, best record in baseball on the road. Something's got to give. I mean, Texas is good at home. We're good on the road. So it's two teams in their comfort zone. And, if the Orioles can get to that bullpen, I think they've got the confidence back that, hey, we can swing it with these guys.
And I'm right there with you. And that's why I wanted to bring up the Adley Rutschman, Cedric Mullins struggles, is because two of your guys that can make an extreme impact haven't swung the bat well this series. And then the blink of an eye, the flip of a switch, that can change. And it really can take, for Cedric, he's a guy laying down a bunt, using his speed. Adley just he did have the double yesterday, obviously, but I tell you, as a hitter, man, you get a bat that just right off the get jammed, shatters your bat, hurts your hands, but you get a knock, that thought unlocks in your head of like, there it is. So for that, that's first and foremost with those guys. Hey, pressure's off the Orioles now. They got nothing to lose at this point. I don't care if everyone's saying that they're the number one seed. And also keep this in mind, a little fun fact. The Rangers and Orioles split this season series, right? Mm-hmm. The road team won the first two games of each series. So meaning when the Orioles went to Texas, the O's took the first two. Texas came to Baltimore. They took the first two. This DS series, Texas came to Baltimore and took two. So if we're going to go in that order, why not the Orioles going down to Arlington and to Texas and take two there? This series isn't over. And you've come this far, anyone, to doubt this team. What's it going to take for one more game? But Zach, I saw you tweet this out.
Yeah.
It just takes one. It just takes one game. Just takes one game.
I've been, my big thing the past 24 hours is I am as much as possible embracing 2004 Kevin Millar and the fact that I think I love the quote, if there's ever a group of idiots that could pull this off, it's these guys. And I think that just perfectly just embodies what this team is like. It's just a bunch of guys going out there, having fun. And if there was ever a group that wasn't going to care that it's 2-0, they got to go win 3 straight, it's this team. And like I've said a million times, if you're the Rangers, you got to win. You got to win Tuesday, because when you give this team confidence, it is very hard to get rid of it.
Especially with their guy on the mound. Evaldi's going for him, so time will tell. Hey, Brad, any closing thoughts with the series or with game 3 coming up?
No, man, I think Zach hit the nail on the head. I was actually going to reference Millar too. You know, it's not unheard of, unlike other sports, for a team to go down like this 0-2 and then come back and get a sweep. So you know, listen, there's odds stacked against the O's, but that's kind of how it's been all season. No reason to believe that they can't beat the odds here.
Damn right. Well, hey, I also wanted to shout out here, Ronald. Thank you for tuning in. You've been watching our episodes. That's electric. Really appreciate that support. We're going to keep bringing it to you. Mace as well. I think Zach, apparently we might have gone over 1,000, or Brad, Zach. Stop traffic. Wow. I don't know if that's,
we do it on stream.
I don't know.
We're at 998.
No, almost there. Well, hey, Mace, I appreciate it. We're getting there. But thank you for your support as always. We greatly appreciate it. You know, it's funny. Any Skies on X just shot me a message and said, "Hey Zach, good seeing you on the show. Question for Ryan: when was is this Ryan when he was with the Astros?" And it's a picture of Lance Berkman, which I have gotten at quite a bit. Is that Lance could look like my father? Yeah. Which when I was bigger, Ryan, when I was weighing about 245, thick
power hitter.
Oh yeah, well,
power hitter, Ryan.
Everything else. Yeah, there was a lot of similarities in appearance. I'll tell you that for sure. But yeah, that's gonna cover. I think. Actually, I'll just answer this real quickly. How much could Grayson give you in game 4 or 5? I think he can give you, honestly, whatever you need him to give at this point in time. I do. I think all hands will be on deck if you get to that point. I think Bradish would potentially get the chance at the ball in game 4, but maybe they could trust a guy like Kyle Gibson. But I do think Dean Kramer starting game 3. I think Kyle Gibson's going to be hot for game 3 as well. So stay tuned for that. Should be a lot of fun, and keep rooting on those birds. All right, Brad, what we got next?
Up next, we got the Ravens. Let's break this down a little bit. Now, we know what happened with the Ravens game. 7 drop passes. Lamar had an incredible game. But mainstream media has really kind of taken it to the Ravens, and in particular, Stephen A. Smith. So this has kind of been the talk around Ravens fans over the last, I don't know, since First Take came on the air this morning. Take a listen to this clip here real quick on what Stephen A. had to say about Lamar Jackson and his play so far this season?
The Ravens getting their money's worth on Lamar Jackson?
No.
The answer is no. The answer is no. And here's the reason why. Coach, I'm going to remind you of this. 5 years, $260 million. $135 million fully guaranteed. Overall guarantees escalating to about $185 million. They're 3-2. I saw Nelson Aguilar drop passes. We ain't surprised by that. We've seen him do it in the past.
That's true. His
He
career.
dropped a touchdown pass. Okay, we're not too surprised by that. We respect them both. We know they could play, but damn it, they ain't the first time they drop passes, okay? And the fact that you got rugby footballs in the building from some offensive coordinator just accentuates your point. I get it. But here's the flip side to it, guys. Lamar Jackson, 2 fourth-quarter turnovers yesterday, now has an NFL worst 11 turnovers in a fourth quarter or overtime of one-score games since 2021. That is inexcusable. That is inexcusable. We got to look at it from that perspective. We also got to look at the fact that he leads all NFL players with 7 fumbles. 7 fumbles this year. I mean, far be it for me to bring that up. But didn't you talk about not turning the damn ball over? Now, interceptions ain't the only way you can turn the ball over. You can also turn the ball over by fumbling the damn ball.
Right.
He's leading all players. All players. All right, 7 fumbles, 4 lost, okay? He's accounted for 8 touchdowns this year, but has 6 total turnovers in 5 games. Come on, man. That's not what they're paying you for. And at the end of the day, you got to look at it from that perspective. We know what Lamar can do. I understand they're dropping his passes. I understand they should have easily won this game. 2 touchdown passes, that's 14 points right there. Right. Dropped in the hands of Aguilar and Bateman. I get it. I understand it. 8 drops overall. I got it. That's atrocious. We get it, okay? Yeah. Especially when your defense is number 2 in yards allowed, in points allowed and yards allowed. Defense is doing their job offensively. You're not doing your job. But it starts with him. And even though you got those drops, at the end of the day, damn, if you don't turn the ball over, you win anyway. And this man has been turning the ball over, and that is not what they're paying him to do. So you got to come to Lamar. If they were just dropping passes, Coach, that would be one thing. But when you can point to more turnovers than anybody in the league, when you can point to more fumbles than anybody in the league, when you can point to his, in terms of one-possession games, one-score games, with 11 turnovers in NFL worst in the last 3 years, come on, man. We got to look at Lamar Jackson and say, yo, that ain't good enough.
Initial thoughts. Ryan, go ahead.
Okay. So, look, I think I tweeted this out. Stats can paint a picture and they can help, but they don't tell the full story, right? So obviously it's been documented that Lamar and fumbles have been a problem, right? Like that I understand, right? We've noticed it. There's been a little bit of plays here and there, but if we're talking specifically about the Pittsburgh Steelers game, so many things went wrong in that game where, yes, you can say that the interception in the end zone is a mistake.
That was a frustration throw. It was towards the end of the game, in my opinion. Like that interception was more or less he's just trying to force something to happen because he doesn't know who to throw to at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm saying, I think what I was getting to is that for Lamar in the red zone, they could have put the game away 10-8. But again, throughout the whole game, they were putting themselves in a position over and over and over again to have big plays, to set themselves up for success. And every time they missed on an opportunity, the Steelers stayed in the game. And that's the part of it, is that the Steelers, and this is why this rivalry drives Ravens fans bonkers, is because the Steelers just find a way to stay in. But specifically yesterday, it was the Ravens' lack of execution. But that was not necessarily on the problem of Lamar Jackson. And I hate the fact that the Ravens win this game, even if it's sloppy, we're not having this conversation. They're 4-1. So that's just where I think the narrative, it doesn't paint the picture. Lamar Jackson has played some very good football. He's made some very good throws, and he's still trying to get his full cast of guys back. And clearly you can see guys are a little bit rusty and not being able to do it. And then like the Zay Flowers, I mean, Zach, I think you saw it. The Zay Flowers getting tripped up way down the field. That's just unfortunate.
Yeah. And I was talking about this. I actually tweeted this out after the game. I said the Baltimore Ravens have successfully beat the Baltimore Ravens. And it truly was one of those things. I mean, you can look at it right before half. It's something that for some reason got blamed on Harbaugh and Lamar for needing to know better. despite that after the game, Linderbaum said he thought the guy jumped offside, so he tried to get the free play. Didn't happen. So you have that situation. I didn't like that Stephen A was harping on this fumble that Lamar had, because if you watch it, Ronnie Stanley just gets beat and the ball gets hit by Alex Highsmith, who's one of the best pass rushers in the league, while Lamar's going to throw. In a situation where there's no timeouts, there's less than a minute left, he has to make something happen. I'm not going to blame Lamar for that. But I think it's funny that Stephen A. Smith said Lamar's not playing up to his contract, but after each point he said something good Lamar did, and then said, but as we know, the receivers let him down. So I'm not sure where that correlation comes, that it's Lamar's receivers letting him down means he's not playing well. But I saw this stat on Twitter. Shout out Scott Barrett. So Lamar finished 22 of 38 with 236 yards, no touchdowns. If you assume every drop is caught, no run after the catch, so just dead where it is, Lamar finishes 29 of 38, 353 yards, and at least 2 touchdowns. And these are all minimal numbers. We're talking about Lamar Jackson MVP conversations if that's what the stat line looks like.
Well, and that's what we've been talking about.
Bad.
Yeah, that's what we've been talking about leading up to this game, really. I mean, we had the Lamar conversation as far as MVP last Thursday. And, Stephen A., I will say, has never really been a true fan of Lamar Jackson. He's always had good things to say, but it's always been a yeah, but with him. I thought that Sarah Ellison said this quite nicely. She said the irony here is that Stephen A. Smith, who has some of the most dishonest reporting about Lamar and the Ravens contract negotiations, claiming Baltimore's offers were so low that they were insulting 5 weeks into the season. And now Lamar isn't living up to the money. According to Sarah, he is all over the place. And she's referring to, Stephen A. apparently talking to people in Lamar's camp when it came to the contract negotiations. And he was so far off on those numbers. It was a bit comical. But let me get back to, the Lamar Jackson stats here. So this is what, if we take the fumbles away, of course, and now which kind of goes against what Stephen A. was arguing. Here's Lamar's numbers up to this point. This isn't even including the rushing numbers that he has. He's got 1,030 yards, 70% completion percentage. That's including the drops, by the way. And then
I was just going to say that.
8 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's having a very similar year to what he had in 2019 as far as stats go. In 2019, he was 66% completion percentage, 3,127 yards passing. And, we know what he did in the rushing game. But, he had 6 interceptions, so he's kind of on pace to having the same amount of INTs. Now, the fumbling, I will say, is not really excusable. Obviously, the last play of the game was, is what it is. I get your argument on that, Zach, but he has had a case of the dropsies this season, and it's been pretty bad.
Without a doubt.
But every other stat that he's put on here has been absolutely incredible. All the wide receiving core has to do is catch the damn ball. It's just crazy. Like we were so excited about this receiving core. They're coming in. Lamar's finally got weapons to throw to, and then it's almost as if you want Willie Snead back at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I will say this. I mean, the wide receivers up until this point have been solid, given the fact that some of them have missed time too, like OBJ and Rashad Bateman. I mean, Nelson Aguilar has played very well. Yes, he had that costly drop in the situation.
Yeah, more than one yesterday.
I know, yeah. But I meant on the very big play. Yeah. So obviously, you can talk about that, but overall, this group's done really well, and especially in the drop categories, they weren't dropping passes. This was just, it felt like after the first drop, it was a snowball effect. It was one after the other. And sometimes you have games like that as just a professional, and you sit there and like, what the hell's going on? That's not excusing that by any means. But there are games like that. I think the problem that people have when this happens is it feels like this happens against Pittsburgh specifically.
Yeah.
It feels like it's against the Steelers constantly, where you're sitting there. I'll say this, I had the pregame show going on at 105.7, but the Ravens were winning 10-0, I believe. And it felt like this game should have been 21-0. It felt so dominant by the Ravens.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it is. You can look at this as a positive if you're a Baltimore Ravens fan. The positive is that the Ravens so far this season have been in every single game. They've either dominated the game or they've been in every single game. The negative then would be is that the 2 games that the Ravens lost, it felt like they found a way to not close it out. It wasn't that the team actually went out and outperformed them. I think that's where the frustration part gets into it, especially with the fact that the Colts had Gardner Minshew at quarterback. And then in this case, Kenny Pickett in this offense really couldn't do much this entire season so far. So I understand where people get frustrated, but if you're going to put that blame on Lamar Jackson specifically, I don't think that that's warranted. I don't think that that's fair. And if you're the Ravens, and again, I think the most frustrating thing for me is that the Bengals are now 2-3. And they're sitting one game back. I think if there's anything that gets taken away, is just that it was the opportunity to really separate yourself. But Lamar Jackson has been nothing short of a spectacular talent. He's throwing the football very well. Now, Rick did bring up here, I can let the fumble go, which again, end of the game, pass rusher makes a play, but not the interception. The one thing I will say is taking care of the ball in the red zone is essential. And in that case, in that scenario, guy made a good play, but regardless of it, you turn the ball over in the red zone. This isn't a Lamar issue. This is just across the NFL. You turn the ball over in the red zone, you can look up and say, well, how did the game turn out wrong? The Ravens had 2 circumstances with the field goal opportunity that didn't happen, the drop touchdown, and the interception in the end zone where you sit there and go, well, man, that's a lot of points that are left off the board.
Yeah, I think another thing that gets me annoyed about that late interception, I guess first I will point out, I think that drop ball by Nelson Aguilar might have been the best pass of Lamar Jackson's career. I mean, just everything. If that ball's caught and a touchdown, you see that on every highlight on ESPN all day. But because it was dropped suddenly, Lamar had a bad game. But I don't want to – Lamar's interception is inexcusable. It shouldn't happen. But something I'm also wondering is we get the ball on the 8-yard line. First play handed to Gus, who got 5 or 6 yards. And it was clear every time we were handing the ball off, we were getting 4 to 5 yards. And I don't understand why we suddenly decided to get cute. We wanted to, let's see if we can get a fade to Odell. Let's try to run these little play actions. I would have handed the ball to the bus 2 more times, waste clock, and then worst case, you kick a field goal. And I just think throwing the ball there, I understand they saw Odell like matched up one-on-one with a rookie. You love those chances, but still, I would have rather, hindsight 2020, just hand the ball to Gus 3 times.
Well, and also the one quick point too, and the red zone success in Cleveland was a lot of run designs and Lamar having the ball in his hands, making a read option type of look. So to your point, that's where Lamar, even his bread and butter of, can really keep a defense off balance. Again, it's the what ifs, but it's still for the Ravens. This defense is playing top notch, by the way. Like, let alone Marlon got beat at the end. That's not ideal. But overall, defense played extremely, extremely well. And this team should be good for the long road. But I will say this next game going to Tennessee, going to London to play Tennessee is not going to be a walk in the park. I actually am already sweating thinking about it.
Yeah. And then you get the nice reward of flying back to America to play the Detroit Lions, who are just one of the nitty gritty teams of this NFL that is just never fun to play. So definitely not an easy next 2 weeks. And you just got to hope that they can pull it out.
Absolutely. Brad, final thoughts? Are we ready to move on?
Let's move on. You were talking about the Lions, and we got a new segment here. We're going to keep it short because we're a little bit short on time, I think, for you, Ryan. But let's get into this a little bit. So, last week we tried to do the old confidence meter. I think what we kind of settled on was buy or sell. Actually, before that, real quick, who do you got today? Who do you got tonight? Monday Night Football, Packers, Raiders.
Oh, goodness. I'm going to go give me Vegas at home. If it's not now, it never will be. And with no Aaron Jones, I think that's really going to limit this Packers, the dynamics of the Packers offense. So give me the Raiders at home. Probably still a close game.
I think so too. As much as I love Jordan Love and I want to see the Packers win here, Devontae Adams, I think, is going to go off on his former team. Raiders at home for me. What do you got, Zach?
It looks like the Packers are going to win because I'm also on the Raiders.
Yep.
But the biggest decision for me is Jimmy Garoppolo is just a certified winner. And I think no matter where he goes, it's like you said, it's not going to be pretty. He can never win a pretty game. But if there's a close game, I like Jimmy Garoppolo. Got Devontae coming up against the Packers. I just think it's all kind of pushing towards Vegas to win tonight in a good game.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's get into it. What, as I was mentioning, buy or sell. There is 19 teams that are either 2-3 or 3-2 in the NFL right now. And as we've talked over the last week or so, Ryan, we just really don't know who these teams are just yet, except for the 49ers. You really just have no idea. So let's play a little game. Let's call it buy or sell. First team up, the Washington Commanders. Buy or sell on the Washington Commanders. Are they for real? Do they have any kind of chance of making the playoffs this season? Ryan, go.
I want to buy, but after what happened against Chicago, I got to sell. I think that was probably the most disappointing result you could have. Now, I'm happy for the Bears, though. I'm happy for Fields because it has been a complete dumpster fire for the entire season so far. But I am happy to see that they rallied after a disappointing loss. But we're talking about the Commanders here. And for the Commanders, after you played a brilliant game against Philly, lose in overtime, you feel like, okay, well, that's one of the top teams in the NFC. Come home on a short week, and you get just punched right in the damn mouth by the Bears, a team that could not buy a victory in almost a year. That, to me, is concerning, and especially when you look at their upcoming schedule, where they still have to play the Giants now, where you're going, well, the Giants aren't playing well, so they should win that game, but you got to go play Atlanta that's winning. You got to play Philly again, the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, Rams, and that 49ers team. So I'm selling because if you can't get the games that you need to have, you're going to have to steal a couple from those other teams, and I find that hard for this year.
Who you got, Zach?
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I gotta sell with these guys. I mean, just if you look at their season already, 4-point win against a Cardinals team. Now, granted, the Cardinals have been probably the feistiest team in the NFL this year. They just stick in every game. Then you have a 2-point win versus a struggling Broncos team. So 2-0, you're feeling good about yourself. Get just punched in the mouth by the Bills, 37-3. Like you said, Ryan, then you get that next week. It's a division matchup. You play so well against Philly. It gets squeaked out at the last second. Your confidence is high. And then the Bears just come and just punch you in the face again in a game that you should win. So I gotta sell on them. I think the confidence is just up and down right now. It's hard to say they're going to be a good team.
I'm the same way. I'm encouraged by Sam Howell's performance, except for the interception.
I do like Howell.
He's thrown for 1,349 yards up to this point, 6 touchdowns, but also 6 interceptions. And that's the real big problem is the INTs, because his completion percentage is 68%, damn near 70. So he's doing well. His accuracy is good. He's just got to figure out how to not turn the ball over. And if he can figure that out, maybe I'll start to become a little bit of a buyer, but I'm in this until they can figure out how to not turn the ball over. I'm going to be a sell on the Commanders as well. Next up is the Dallas Cowboys, who got their asses whooped on Sunday Night Football by the 49ers, and it was the most embarrassing defeat the Cowboys have ever had in the Cowboys-49ers rivalry.
All right, so Brad, just why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah.
We already know where this is going for you.
It's Dak Prescott, right? Like Dak is just he's just not the guy. And I've been talking about it since the beginning of the season. I had mentioned that, the 14 interceptions was not a fluke from last season, that things were going to continue onto this season. The Cowboys, the teams that they beat leading up to this game were all 1-3 teams. And they come in and face an actual team that they need to beat, and they don't even show up at all. So for me, the Cowboys, I'm a sell. pretty hard sell on this one. Last week, my confidence meter on them was a 5, just because I was like, let's see what they do against a real team. And what they did against a real team was jack shit. So I'm not a buyer on the Cowboys. I just don't see how they're going to continue to do well throughout the season if Dak Prescott doesn't show up.
Zach, go ahead.
This might not be an option, but I would buy on sale. I think they make the playoffs. I think they're a decent enough team. They've got enough talent on offense, at least around Dak, that they find a way into the playoffs. Do I think they're a threat now? I would not go out and say this is, a Super Bowl contender. This is someone who's you got to beat to make to the championship game. It's just I don't see them being a threat, especially to the 49ers right now. I mean, we saw how that happened. I mean, that was not competitive from the second the game started. So I'm going to sell, but if they go on sale, I would consider buying them.
Yeah, I'm with you that I'm buying their playoff team, but I'm selling that they are the top 2 teams to beat. I still think it's the Eagles and the 49ers above anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But for Dallas is just which Dallas team are you going to get? And I think that's the thing. They beat up on the teams you're supposed to beat up on. So that's that's a check plus, right? You got to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But when games get tougher, can you win them? I mean, upcoming for them, it's not like this is getting easier. You got to play the Chargers in LA. You got to play the Rams that are that feisty team. Then you got to go to Philly. You got to play the Seahawks and the Bills and Dolphins, both on the road. So they have a lot of time to figure things out, by the way. But so far, what's going on with Dallas is inconsistency, and Dallas is going to be in the playoffs, and they can match up well with teams. But just like the one team that we know that they can't match up with right now is the San Francisco 49ers. That team is just head and shoulders better. And Brock Purdy has entered the conversation, if he wasn't already, of being an MVP candidate. And what's his nickname for you, Brad?
Big Cock Brock.
I think that's actually his nickname, to be honest. All right, next one.
Yeah.
Next one is going to be we got the Bills. The Bills lost a tough game in London to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which at this point it might as well be a home game for them. The Jaguars were there from last week. They had a lot of time to acclimate to the time difference. And I talked about this on Thursday. I thought the Bills were going to lose this game. Lose it, they did. I don't think this is an indictment on the Bills, so I'm going to continue to buy them. I do think they're one of the better teams in the AFC, probably top 3, top 4 in the AFC. It's tough to kind of watch them. We saw that Stephon Diggs kind of lose it on the sidelines. But look, I mean, it's always tough to play in London if you're not Jacksonville. And I think that I would just hang this game up as a let's set it and forget it and move on to the next week.
All right, I'll jump in here. Bills, I'm buying the Bills. The Bills are still Josh Allen, what he can do. The thing that gets people to scratch their heads is there's these moments of, well, why does this team look like they're this juggernaut that can't be stopped all of a sudden? Similar to the Cowboys in some ways, where it's all of a sudden is how do they feel like they're unbeatable? And then they have these question marks. But Josh Allen is such a playmaker, can do so much. The Bills have had success going into the postseason. They've won some games in the postseason. They haven't gotten over that hump yet, but they just show that they still are that team to beat in the AFC East. So I'm buying still what the Bills are selling.
I think just before you go, Zach, I think what I would surmise this as the Bills are somewhere between the team we saw last week when they took it to the Miami Dolphins and yesterday. They're somewhere in between there, and that still makes them a damn good football team.
Yeah, I'm pretty straightforward. I'm buying, kind of like you said, Ryan. I mean, this is still the team to beat in the AFC East. I mean, we saw them absolutely dismantle Miami, and until Miami beats them, I'm gonna say the Bills are the front runners for that division. So I'm still buying them.
All right, next up, and we just got done talking about him, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Jacksonville has the same record now as the Bills. Trevor Lawrence kind of looked pretty good. He went 25 for 37, QBR rating of 78.6. I think passer rating of 102.9. I think that what we saw from the Jaguars late last year is more of what they truly are. I think it was just a couple of things they needed to straighten out. It kind of looked as if they were pretty solid on that front in London yesterday. We'll see what happens next week for them, but I'm buying the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they make the playoffs, and I don't know if I think it's pretty convincingly as well.
Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, I am all in on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they are, I'm not going to say Super Bowl threat in the AFC, but they're giving me that thought of I love what they're doing on offense with ETN, Ingram, you have Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley. I just think they have such a good scheme. They're well coached by Doug Peterson, and I just love the way they play together. I think they are getting to the point where they are on the verge of next year. We can look at them and go, okay, that's a team that you got to worry about in the playoffs. And I think last year's experience is great for them in the playoffs. I think this is a year they make the playoffs, maybe make a little noise, win another game or so. But next year is when I'm fully going in on them. But I love the Jaguars. I really do. I think they're a fun, up-and-coming young team.
They're fun. They are, I mean, that is something that they are. But I'm selling on them this year. I don't know if it's just because of the inconsistencies. I think the AFC South, just like what's turning out in the AFC North, is going to be way more competitive than we initially anticipated. I think they still got to play the Titans twice. That even last year, the Titans almost pulled off a win in Jacksonville in a winner go home scenario for both teams with Josh Dobbs at quarterback. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I don't see that changing. I think that the Jaguars can match up with certain teams, but can they take care of other games? And specifically moving forward, they got to play San Francisco, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Titans that I just mentioned twice. And you got to play a Texans team that already gave you the business. So I'm just selling the sense of, I think that they do match up. They do match up against the Jags pretty well. Actually, the last two meetings that they played, the Jags match up against the Bills well. Last two times they faced them, they've won both games. So they are a matchup-based team for me. And I just don't know if I'm just not sold that they're going to win that division just yet. And I think that's what's holding me back, because let's just face it, the Colts are way more competitive. So are the Texans. And I still think Mike Vrabel and the Titans have something to say about it. All right, next up.
Well, I was going to say,
go ahead, Zach.
We haven't even seen the Colts with a fully healthy Jonathan Taylor, fully involved Jonathan Taylor. So I think that's another thing that obviously Zach Moss is incredible right now. I mean, his
balling
stats are through the roof. Yeah. I mean, I think someone on ESPN said he's making, it's like 1/17 of what Jonathan Taylor's making, and he's making it known. So
$1 million. You got $1 million contract.
Yeah, he has $1 million. He's
I feel bad.
Get paid in the offseason.
I feel bad for everyone that started Jonathan Taylor and left Zach Moss on the bench this week for fantasy. Woof. Yeah. Moss went nuts. But for our last team then, and then I think we're going to be close to wrap, or we got two teams left. I'll ask you this question here, Brad. We got the Lions. We just talked about them. Team that is taking over. They're 4-1 in the NFC North. They just won a convincing game over a struggling Panthers team. Zach, let's start with you. Lions, buy or sell?
I think this is going to be another Jaguar situation. I love what is happening in Detroit, and I think Jared Goff is the perfect quarterback for that team, and I think that's really what makes it all go. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get more and more involved. I know he's injured right now, but I think just all around, Amon-Ra was out this last game as well. They love playing for Dan Campbell, and it's like we keep saying, they're just that team that even if they went in the playoffs against the 49ers, I'm taking the 49ers, but I'm looking at it going, how physical are the Lions going to make this to where it's only a 7-point game? So they just have that kind of mentality. Like Dan Campbell says, they will bite your kneecaps off. And I truly believe that they play so hard for that coach, for that. It's fun. Like I said about the Jaguars, but they have so much young talent. I really enjoy watching it. I think they're a good team.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, look, the way that they took it to Carolina, it was hilarious. 42-24 was the final there. And Jared Goff threw 20 for 28, I want to say. Let me just double checked it. Yeah, 20 for 28, 236 touchdowns. Or sorry, 236 yards, 3 touchdowns. My God. And near perfect passer rating. Look, they're firing on all cylinders. The defense is good. We saw the defense show up against Patrick Mahomes in week 1, and obviously it feels like that was a lifetime ago, but they're still the same defense today. We talk about the offense a lot and what Jared Goff and the boys are doing, but that defense is also pretty damn good as well. So I'm a buyer of the Lions here, hands down. They're 2-1 in the division. I think they take the division pretty handily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying them. I think that David Montgomery might have been one of the best pickups for that team. Yeah. He looks like a bowling ball, especially with that offensive line. Talking about punching someone in the mouth, biting a kneecap off. It just fits it. And then on offense, Goff has played tremendous, and they have weapons. I mean, Sam Laporte is a stud. Amon-Ra didn't even play last week. Josh Reynolds is making plays, and Jameson Williams is going to factor in somehow moving forward as he comes off his suspension. So I think we're all on board buying them. They're fun to watch. Last team here, and then your guys got to get out here to get loosened up for basketball tonight. But the last one is the Seahawks, who they dominated the Giants before they hit their bye this past week. They're sitting at 3-1. Yeah, it's very true. Specifically at East Rutherford where the Giants play. Yeah. But here we are. The Seahawks sit at 3-1. Their only loss being on the first game against the Rams, where they got handled by the Rams 30-13. The Seahawks went to Detroit and won a game against the Lions. They beat the Panthers at home. Guys, buy or sell, and we'll start with you, Brad. Buy or sell on the Seattle Seahawks?
I'm looking at their schedule, and I'm going to go and buy. Their next 5 weeks, they have Cincinnati, which that game could go either way, but if they play like they did against Detroit, I think that they should be able to take Cincinnati. Then it's Arizona. That should be a win. Cleveland could go either way, but I think they certainly have the team to beat Cleveland. So that's three wins right there. They could go they could go 6-1 the next 3 weeks. We have Baltimore. I think that if Baltimore shows up, they may lose that game. Then it's Washington, back to Los Angeles, and the schedule gets pretty tough after that. So if they can go and rip off 3-4 wins over the next 5 weeks, I think that I'm going to be a buyer of Seahawks.
Zach,
yeah, I'm there with you too. I'm going to buy these guys, and very similar to the Lions. I think the system they're running, they have the right guy with Geno Smith. They have a great running game. Their wide receivers are incredible. They need to get Jackson Smith and Jigba more involved. But I mean, once he starts really taking those steps, that is an offense that can hang with anybody. So I like the Seahawks. Don't think they're necessarily, like you said, they're going to have to rip off a few games here before the schedule gets tough. But I think we see them in the playoffs by the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm buying Seahawks as well. I think that I love what Geno does. I think that they do have a lot of great pieces. That defense to me is what's going to take them to the next level. If their defense is showing what they did against the Giants, now it's great. Granted, is that the biggest measuring stick? I don't know, but we know that the Seahawks can score points, and if they can play even half of like they do against what they did against the Giants on defense, this could be a very tough team. And they also have a great running game with Kenneth Walker. He's been a stud so far this season. So they have an identity on offense, which that should give them a leg up. So we'll find out, but it should be fun. And man, the NFL has just been crazy though through these first 5 weeks. But I think that's all we got. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep. I can still hear you.
Cool. Well, I can't see you guys because
have a weird blank stare at us. That's it.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, no,
you look good. Don't worry. You look good. Don't worry.
All right. Well, I think that does it for us. Brad, can you wrap this up for us? Because I can't even see my screen.
Sure can, guys. First of all, Zach, thanks so much for taking the time and spending with us this evening.
Bravo.
We're still 2 away from 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed already, please make sure that you do so. Get us over that 1,000 mark. We certainly would appreciate it. And we'll be back Thursday around the same time. So make sure you're hitting that notification bell as well to get notified when we go live. And guys, enjoy the rest of your week. If you're a Baltimore sports fan, it's okay. You'll be all right. Go O's tomorrow. And
Lock in.
and enjoy yourselves, guys. Have a safe night.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.
You too, Ryan.
Still can't.